Hey folks, it's Michael Johnson. Welcome to this week's Energy Sketch. Going to talk about a sort of personal, creative, energy related topic today, and that's the trade off between time and perceived quality. So, for any project, for any creative endeavor, we could measure, let's say, quality, and I put that in quotes. We could go into a whole host of episodes, and we may in the future about how do we measure quality in creative output. But let's measure quality versus time. And you could imagine that it goes like one of these asymptoting first order equations that you would solve in an early calculus differential equations course. Quality is the exponential of minus e to the minus t over tau. And tau is our time constant. And this equation asymptotes to 100% quality. It never really reaches, ever, 100%. There will always be an epsilon. And that's our first Zen lesson of this episode, which is related to an earlier episode that I spoke about taking these feathers. You have these ideas, you have these projects that you want to do. You pick a feather, and in your imagination, it looks magical and wow. And to you, that's like 100% quality, right? Like the if you had like unlimited money, time, resources, availability, all this stuff, you could create this incredibly beautiful thing, right? But then you got to bring that down to earth and start working on it. So often, right, we got to accept that we'll never reach that 100% quality, whatever that looks like. We're always striving for quality, but we should always also strive for, wellness and flow and, keeping our momentum going and being well, making a difference out there. So that's a little parentheses around how we measure quality, and remember that nothing will ever be perfect. So we measure quality versus time, and this is sort of like break the time into chunks, and that's this idea of time constants. And if you look at this curve, you can achieve about 63% of getting from like 0 to 1. You could get 63% of the way in one time constant, 63% of the way in the next time constant, bit by bit by bit, but you'll never reach perfect, right? But that's the idea of the time constants. And, we can measure some variation, some level of quality on the vertical axis. So the first question to ask yourself, well, actually, there are two areas where we can have an influence, and there's a third that I'll get to a bit later after we get the rudiments down first. So, first thing to ask yourself, how much time are you willing to spend on this task? And I like to think of these time constants in the scope of a creative project to be sort of like work chunks, and you could think of that as like, well, 1 hour, or this sort of 25 minutes, this Pomodoro technique where you set a timer for 25 minutes, work on a chunk, timer goes off. Oh, okay, you take a short break, you get up, you take your stretch, you reset your stuff, then you dive in for another thing. And you can think of that as a kind of a flow session. To my mind, those are kind of like how many chunks. That's how you should measure really your creative time that you're putting in, is how many chunks am I willing to spend on this thing. And remember, the second Zen lesson of this episode, thanks to Oliver Burkeman for his book 4,000 Weeks. So it's a reminder that roughly, in an order of magnitude, we'll all have roughly 4,000 weeks of, time on this planet. So that's how many time constants can you fit in there? You don't have unlimited time either. Remember that. Zen lesson number 2 of the episode. Thanks to Oliver Burkeman for his book, 4,000 Weeks. Links are in the description. The other factor to look at is where are you setting the bar, right? In a creative project, what you want at the end, typically, although maybe you're just a collectioner and you want to just keep everything to yourself, but if you want your stuff that's going out into the world to touch people, to make a difference, to make the difference perhaps in the lives of people around you in your community, causes that you care about, loved ones, other things, where is your audience? Where are you expressing things out to? And where's the bar where, you measure when is it good enough to ship out? And there's a concept there of shipping stuff, right? So this is another metric really to measure is the regularity, the cadence, the rhythm, the momentum that you have in shipping out packets of work. And so to regularly ship out packets, you need to sort of set a bar, a combination of a bar in the vertical axis and a time sort of sets kind of when you're like, okay, good enough to send out. And so it's important to be aware of the kind of diminishing returns. If you dig into something, keep going, trying to approach that asymptote. For some things, it's very important that we work out the nth decimal place, for like big infrastructure projects, all that stuff. Yes, we need to work out the fine details in a rigorous and robust way. Here, I'm talking more about things like writing, ideas, sharing things with colleagues, videos like this, projects where you want to express things out in the world in a creative way. So you got to set your bar. And as an example, on these episodes, to me, for myself, typically I've been setting the bar really low for myself. And maybe that's a little behind the scenes hint and snippet at sort of how I'm building up this series here, these episodes, is that every week I just commit to myself that there shalt be a video on Monday at 12:12 p.m. on youtube.com/@energysketch. And I give myself the freedom that I don't really care almost about the quality, not caring about the quality because we make it light for ourselves. We make it easy to get in, to jump on the ride, make a quick video, send it out, get into the flow, get into the momentum, get on the ride. Which brings us to the other thread that I just mentioned, the sort of perceived quality. So it's very important, like, what are your metrics for quality? What does quality mean to you? What does it mean to the ones that you are sending that material to, who are going to do something with it in the next phase, perhaps, or your audience, your desired audience? So those are other things to consider there, with not just getting hyper focused on one definition of quality and then digging more and more time to make that definition of quality, as fine as it can be, while missing all the other definitions of quality. I mean, again, as an example on these episodes, there's the graphics, there's the story, there's me talking, there's the editing, there's the audio quality. There's so many quality things there. There's the time. You could measure, consistency is a part of the quality. So I've focused heavily on consistency and have made my bar low for the other stuff, quality, etc., even if I'm proud of the quality. And that's so that every week, depending on factors, right? Your metrics can evolve over time, in the short term and in the long term, in your life, as you start to value different things. So now we've covered the two bases, which are how much time, how many time constants out of your 4,000 weeks on planet Earth do you want to really commit to this project? And where's your bar? What's your audience? What's your quality metrics? And when is it good enough to ship it out there, send it out into the world, express it out into the world? The next thing, once you've covered those two bases and really let yourself have an organic sort of sense of what that means for you specifically, then we can get into what we might call the more productivity related thing. So it's very dangerous. There's a million and one productivity hacks, ideas, apps, and it's easy to fall into the trap of like, no, I just need to get the next like app to like schedule my podcast and then I can start doing a podcast. Like, no, you just do a podcast now. You get your phone, you start recording, you hit publish. Like you have a podcast. Yeah. So this is kind of how I rolled at the beginning. But now, like I've built up slowly, like building up a system. And part of that is like having different hats, different buckets, from ideas to making the PowerPoint to recording the video to editing it to publishing it on social media, and then it's out the door. And that's kind of the cycle, and managing that has been really valuable for me. So we can think of this productivity sort of bent a little bit as being like, let's get more from each time constant, each tau. We want our impact to be sort of magnified for each unit of time that we personally put in. And so how can we do that? Well, part of it is focus and flow is the first item that I've put there. And what I mean there is that for that time constant, for those 40 minutes, let's say, of focus time that you have, the deeper you can focus, the more you can be in flow, having the task be at the right challenge level, giving yourself a place to jump back into the project and really ride it. And I sort of like to take the image of like riding down a not really a roller coaster, but like a water slide, or like on a kayak, whitewater kayaking. You're like, okay, I'm on a ride, I'm just going for it, really in there, in the battle, working it through for those 40 minutes in a focused way and a flowing way. And then at the end, right, taking a rest, recharging, and then getting back for another time constant. So that's really focus and flow can maximize the benefits from each time constant. The next one is like having systems and having like an organized way to manage your projects. And so this is again, the spirit of that is not in a sort of a bad and a controlling way. It's just in order to give yourself an easy entry to get onto the slide, right? You have to have it managed well. So, you want to avoid as much as possible. Where did I put the link for that thing? Oh, is this on email? Is this shared here? Is this shared there? The more that we can have like robust systems where you can just, oh yeah, boom, find what you need, get back in the flow rapidly, then that's very valuable for maximizing the time constants. That means essentially minimizing the time constants or the portions of the time constant that goes to kind of waste, right? Eliminate waste within the time constants. And the third thing is get a team. Essentially, I mean, you can only do so much yourself as a solo actor in this project. And some projects are for solo actors, and some projects maybe start with an inspiration, like for these sketches, for example. I've bootstrapped this whole thing up, myself, from developing the concepts, the ideas, doing the research, doing the PowerPoint, recording it, editing it, publishing it, putting it on socials, getting it out there, all of that stuff. And what I'm, looking to develop is to sort of branch this out into a team. And then you can sort of be directing the team and then have people there that are doing research, that are doing editing. And then you can, get leverage on your contributions. You're still only, delivering a focused on that time constant, but there's then a team of people that are also delivering stuff on those time constants, aligned together with a purpose, with a vision. Then that's when things really start to get cranking over. Okay, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's Energy Sketch, the trade-off between time and perceived quality. So remember, we can plot quality versus time over time constants. And the two key questions to ask are really, what are your values? What are your metrics? How are you measuring quality? And where's your bar? Where do you put the line of when a project or a piece of work is good enough to get sent out there into the machine, out there, expressed out in the world? The other thing is that, time is limited. We have only 4,000 weeks on this planet, roughly speaking. So how many time constants are you going to put in to this piece of work particularly before you say, I've worked enough on it, got to send it out? And then once you've sort of grappled and organically come up with a framework for yourself around those two bars, where's your bar on the quality and where's your time commitment in time constants, then you can really start to focus in more on amplifying, leveraging and amplifying your focus time on each of those time constants through teamwork, through systems, and through focus and flow during those times. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope it was useful for you folks. Love to hear from you. Tune in next week, Monday, 12 p.m., youtube.com/@EnergySketch. Thanks so much for tuning in. Toodaloo!